Cage Minds Uncensored. I'm your host, Micah Frankel. This past weekend, I was up at Buffalo Thunder Resort Casino for Jackson's MMA Series 24, and that's what we'll start off with. Talk about the live local action. The fight of the night was the first fight on the card. CJ Boston and Ashimov Duglabalov, the brother of MMA star Ozzy Duglabalov. They both trained down here at the Jackson Wink Academy, and these two young men engaged in a slugfest to start off the night, testing each other's chins back and forth. Ashimov changes the pace of the fight up, taking it to the ground in the second, is able to advance to the mount position, and from there lock in a head and arm choke to get the submission victory. Jesse Morehouse wanted to show more poise, more variety of skills. He did that. He scored 4 takedowns and also was able to get to the back, flatten out, and get a rear naked choke of Alex Bumgardner. An impressive one for Jesse in rebounding from loss, bouncing back. Go all the way up to our feature amateur fight. Things got heated at the weigh-ins between Mark Matthew McDill and Ozzy Chavez. Ozzy Chavez landed some shots early, didn't like what he was fully seeing at distance, closed that distance down on McDill, and put McDill on the cage for most of the first round, landing good short knees and punches, just beating up the body. In the second round, Chavez would start for the takedown and would eventually get to that side ride wrestler's position. Enough uncountered and open shots were landed that the ref jumps in. Ozzy Chavez on a roll, continuing to roll. Been doing really well his last couple out there. Looking to turn pro here very quickly, I believe. The co-main event, it was a quick night of work for Enrique Gonzalez, getting our knockout of the night. Came out orthodox, switch stances to the southpaw. Cody Hofstetter comes in. They both go to throw lefts, but a much more telegraphed left from Hofstetter. A crisp, clean, tight, straight left from Gonzalez drops Hofstetter, and Gonzalez would drop some bombs over top. 4th knockout, another first round finish. Dynamite in the hands of Enrique Gonzalez. An interesting prospect to keep your eye on. And in the main event, we had Roy Cicito versus Jess Martinez. Both men were undefeated. Someone's had got to go. Cicito came out using the leg kicks very quickly. Martinez didn't like what he was feeling on the feet, gets in on the double underhooks, wrestles Cicito to the ground, and from there would be in control the rest of the first round, floating on top in north-south position a couple times. Cicito would not just lay stagnant. He would not give in. He would force scrambles, but Martinez would be a step ahead at each point. Martinez even getting a deep armbar in the first round that it seemed like would get the victory, but Cicito toughs it out into the second. There was some gas taken away from Cicito from that grappling heavy first round for being in the bad positions. Martinez would again get the fight to the ground, would have the back, lock in the body triangle. Cicito would be fighting off the rear naked choke attempts, but eventually would get caught in the armbar again. It took about 3 adjustments, a couple spin arounds, and the Vanilla Gorilla, Jess Martinez, Santa Fe's own, remains undefeated, getting the submission win at 4:25 of the second round. Talking to him backstage, you can catch the full interview up at Cage Minds MMA show here on YouTube, cageminds.com. Jess has the thought in his head that he wants to become the next face of New Mexico MMA. 3-0, some lofty expectations to get up there. But a young man who's been on the mats, started jiu-jitsu, as you've heard from our interviews before, at 9 years old, the Division III college wrestling, a sound base. And I've been told from Jerome Rivera, a striker coming a long way. Jerome Rivera, another Santa Fe prospect, him and Jess Martinez have told me their goal is for the UFC to need to put Santa Fe as a destination for your creatable character in the UFC 4, the video game. So performance of the night, I gotta go with Jess Martinez. Knockout of the night, Enrique Gonzalez. Fight of the night, again, Ashimov Duglabalov and CJ Boston. That was Jackson's MMA Series 24. For the full results and recap, go to cageminds.com. Now, also on Saturday night, there was UFC action. The UFC was in Orlando, Florida. Couple things to talk about from the Fight Pass prelims. Manny Bermudez needs to work on his stand-up at this level of the game, but it did not cost him against Albert Morales, as Morales put his head down and Bermudez jumps on it. It's all out of me, Brian Ortega status. As soon as Bermudez got that neck locked up, he put Morales into trouble. Every time the fight hit the mat, even if Bermudez was pulling guard, he was throwing up submissions and putting Morales in trouble. Bermudez, with that kind of grappling ability, very interesting to see what he'll do going forward. Ronnie Yaya ran through Russell Doan on this fight. Doan let it become a grappling battle and suffered. I don't know if I'm saying it's too much too soon, but what about Ronnie Yaya versus Manny Bermudez? That would be fun from what we saw out of both of their grappling there on the Fight Pass prelims. One more note from the Fight Pass prelims: you cannot run forward against Sam Alvey. He likes to counter-strike. He throws heavy. Marcin Parchino did not understand that, seemed to get himself gassed out and had a giant adrenaline dump in his UFC debut and just kept running forward into big bombs. Smiling Sam, a huge knockout victory. Fight contested at 205 pounds, and Sam Alvey calls out John Vellante. I think that would be a fun little brawl to have. Alan Jablan just took away the legs from Ben Saunders to open up the Fox prelims and into the second round, already having that base destroyed. Then started working from the clinch, actually giving Saunders a chance. It looked like Jablan was going really hard to end the fight with the spectacular elbow. Saunders found the opening to land a right, but started moving forward again when Jablan backed off, and that was not a good move for Saunders. A leg kick that knocks Saunders off balance. Jablan cuts an angle and throws a perfect straight left knockout of Ben Saunders. Vicious stuff, even more nasty actually than what the bigger Sam Alvey did earlier in the night. Marion Renault survives, being put on her back, put in a crucifix position in the first round to be able to stun, hurt Sarah McMahon on the feet with a big right cross. McMahon with that reactive takedown, but gets set up and is finished off by the triangle. Marion Renault, a huge win, taking out the Olympic veteran, and somebody who's gained a lot of momentum and made their way up the rankings, not very heralded. Marion Renault right behind Raquel Pennington, who reportedly will be fighting Amanda Nunes in the main event of UFC 224. Marion Renault creeping up the ladder, and before you know it, with not much hoopla, not much hype and attention, she is in contentionship and could become the number one contender very soon in that women's 135-pound division. I jumped over it, but I gotta say, a spectacular performance in Angela Hill. We know it's two technical strikers, Angela Hill, the Muay Thai, Marion Moreau, the boxer, and the boxer could not find the distance. It was Hill landing the overhand right and breaking down the legs, winning the clinch battle and taking a dominant unanimous decision victory. Hill had some ups and downs, but again, is a threat in this division. She stood toe-to-toe before with Jessica Andrade, and that has been no easy task for any of the women in the 115-pound weight class. The main card on Fox started up with Max Griffin out-moving, using his length, throwing combinations, and beating up Mike Perry. A very good fight from Griffin. I had it 30-27 for him. Griffin able to take it to the ground a couple times. Also just really able to out-move, frustrate, and confuse Perry, who did not seem to have a diverse repertoire of entry attacks. If you were standing still and allowed him to plot you down, it would work. Griffin moving, using his length, it was a hard formula for Perry to crack. A Next up on the card, you had Alair Latifi versus Ovince St. Preux, a fight that had been put together a couple times. After pawing at each other and kind of feeling out the distance, Latifi would land a big left hand, sending Ovince St. Preux slipping and sliding. Another big shot landed in a breakaway as trying to get away from Latifi. Latifi able to jump on top of a guillotine, chokes out St. Preux while standing in a lackluster, kind of lacking of depth, 205-pound division. It's crazy to think about. Alexander Gustafsson, Jimmy Manuwa, and Alair Latifi are all coming out of the same camp, the same gym there in Sweden, the All-Stars gym. I don't know how inclined they are to fight each other. That makes Glover Teixeira a very busy man, wanted commodity. The same thing for Volkan Oezdemir, as Daniel Cormier is obviously having heavyweight aspirations at the time. We know what's happening at UFC 226, making the 205-pound division really interesting as to what the next step is. What do these training partners do when it comes to fighting each other? Up to the co-main event, and Jessica Andrade proved to be too strong against Tecia Torres, taking unanimous decision victory, winning 2 of the 3 rounds. And for my money, I really thought that Andrade actually won all 3 rounds. Early on in the first round, you saw a lot of effective movement and striking, and even hurting Andrade. But Andrade, her getting hurt by a Torres strike was getting stunned, eating it, and walking forward. To the point where by the end of the round, where Torres was on her back, it was Torres whose face was reddening. Torres was backpedaling. It was an exhausting pace. You could see that first round easily being for Torres. But after that, the pressure, the strength, the grappling ability of Jessica Andrade closing off the outlets, putting Torres against the cage and slamming her, using her strength to get every takedown and just finessing them. Not great technique, but throwing around the smaller fighter. The strongest woman at 115 pounds in the UFC, Jessica Andrade, landed big shots, controlled the fight, takes a unanimous decision win, which is big because this should earn Andrade the opportunity to face the winner of the UFC 223 fight between the rematch between Joanna Jędrzejczyk, now challenging Rose Namajunas for that strawweight title. The winner of that should have to look forward to fighting this Brazilian pit bull. We go up to the main event. You knew this one would not last too long. You knew there'd be a finish. 2 heavy-handed knockout artists. Early on, it was Josh Emmett with a big right hand knocking down Jeremy Stephens. But Stephens would survive to see the second round, where Stephens would throw 2 punches. Emmett would only defend the right, not expecting the left. The left hook cracks Josh Emmett, sends him careening towards the ground. Stephens jumps on top, big ground and pound, elbows, punches. Emmett starts to try to scramble. This is where things become fucking crazy. Emmett scrambling. Stephens is still striking. Stephens is striking with the elbow. It looks like a couple elbows may strain to that illegal area. We're talking about the back of the head. Referee Dan Miragliotta, one of the finest referees that we have in the sport, does not call a foul. Who knows what he's saying through all the yelling and commotion of the announcers and everything. Not called a foul. As Emmett is onto all fours and trying to stand, this is when Jeremy Stephens throws a knee. And it looks like when he throws it, it could miss. It could go in that part of your body between your shoulder and your neck. It could have went along the neck, maybe not hit the head. It could have glanced off the head, just kind of grazed it. But then it also looks like the foot touches the forehead, and when the knee comes back down, when your foot comes back down to touch the ground, it looks like that knee from Stephens hits Emmett in the back of the head. So quite possibly, the knee, when it grazes by, the foot, the knee on the way back down, couple illegal elbows earlier, possibly 5 fouls to the head of Josh Emmett, Josh Emmett, 3 to the back of the head. After the knee lands, Emmett still kind of sprawls out for the takedown. A uppercut from Stevens, and basically lights are out right there for Emmett, who goes to his back. Stevens dives on top, 2 more huge elbows, and Josh Emmett is completely out cold. No acknowledgement of any of these fouls from referee Dan Miragliotta. The benefit of replay, there were fouls. This feels weird. This feels wrong. You get to look at it in retrospect, but I don't know if a referee is gonna acknowledge themselves that they were wrong in this situation. Jeremy Stevens goes out to call out for a world title fight after a main event victory on Fox. Can't blame him for that. Heat of the moment kind of things. But this can't be happening. Referee controversies, judge controversies, it just feels like we're talking about it. We're thinking about it every week. And I'm talking about, for that many fouls to occur, it's just kind of amazing. There was a situation not too long ago with Landon Venata, Bobby Green. On review of the replay, the illegal knee that Venata threw was actually Bobby Green's face connecting with the upper leg of Venata. We're talking about above the knee, the meaty part, the muscly part. So it shouldn't have been a foul because that was not a knee or kick to a downed opponent. But that fight was stopped. This one, we're going to not err on the side of caution and we're going to let it go. The knee seems to be pretty obvious that it's throwing. And if you don't want to talk about the glancing on the way up, if you don't want to talk about that I felt that I saw the foot land to the jaw, you have to acknowledge when the knee comes back down to the ground unintentionally. For sure, unintentionally, it does land to the back of the head of Josh Emmett. If you are the Team Alpha Male and Josh Emmett camp, I'm pretty sure you're appealing this loss and can't wait to see how this unfolds. If you're the UFC and you're looking at Jeremy Stevens, I'm pretty sure that we're moving forward and moving on up to a Jeremy Stevens who's been spectacular in all these wins. Really coming through in some big spots and being a certified main eventer for the UFC. Cub Swanson wants a big opportunity. These two have danced once before. I would love to see it again because Stevens was... You're looking at Swanson as being that other guy that we were talking about, possibly with a title fight on the line. I know he's coming off of the loss to Brian Ortega, but when you look up at this top 10, they've all been beating each other up. So for Jeremy Stevens to fight up, I know he wants the title fight, but with Conor McGregor now starting to mention the names of Edgar and Ortega, and you're thinking that the Edgar Ortega winner is definitely fighting Holloway just to keep Stevens busy. There's Chan Jung Sung, there's Cub Swanson. There will be another fight. One more win, and I think we could be lining up Jeremy Stevens for a title fight, but all depending on what Conor McGregor says. Because if Conor McGregor wants to fight Max Holloway, that probably pushes the Frankie Edgar, Brian Ortega winner out of title contention. But to be realistic, you know that Conor's probably going to come back at 155, still talking about the Nurmagomedov-Ferguson winner. So you'd realistically actually think that Edgar Ortega winner is fighting Holloway. Stevens needs one more, and he would then get the winner after those three guys are done with their little dance. So that was the UFC from Saturday night. In some news and headlines from the UFC has added another fight to UFC 225 in Chicago. Back from a ACL injury. Been over a year since we last saw him. Joseph Benavidez will be taking on Sergio Pettis. In Bellator news, Bellator 200 is going to be taking place May 25th in London, England. The main event has been announced, and it's Gegard Mousasi challenging Rafael Carvalho for the middleweight title. The card will also see in the co-main event David Caveman Rickles against, returning from over a year away from the Bellator cage, MVP Michael Venom Page. That's going down in London. The UFC is continuing their global expansion with a announcement today. The UFC is heading to Chile, and they've announced 4 fights for the card, including women's strawweight bout that'll see Alexa Grasso versus Tatiana Suarez. At welterweight, you got former TUF winner Chad Laprise against Vicente Luque. In the featherweight division, Diego Rivas is taking on Guido Canati. Go to Twitter for the 4th fight, which I cannot remember off the top of my head. So that's a couple of news and updates as to some new stuff in the MMA world. This weekend, there's a ton of action coming up. On Access TV, you're going to have LFA 34, the lightweight titles on the line. Robert Watley defending against Brandon Jenkins. Watley has already defended this title once. Many consider him the best lightweight now outside of the UFC. Considering the guys that haven't had a chance in the UFC, Watley has that respect. 9 straight wins. Looking dominant, great striking, great wrestling. He's taking on the human highlight reel, Brandon Jenkins. Jenkins likes his striking. Let's see if he doesn't get out-wrestled. In a card full of great grapplers, co-main event, submission aces meet, where you got Trey Ogden versus Travis Przinski, Jordan Griffin meets Derek Maynard, Nate Jennerman, who I have an interview up with, takes on John Duvall, Bobby Lee versus undefeated Nick Ammerman. All great grappling matchups, and topped off, like I said, by Watley, who is considered by many as the top lightweight outside of the UFC. Also Friday night on the Paramount Network, you have Bellator action. Bellator 195 from the Windstar World Casino in Thackerville, Oklahoma. The main event has Leandro Higo in his second Bellator title fight. Second time challenging for the title. He's challenging Darian Caldwell. This will be Darian's first defense coming off of dethroning Eduardo Dantes. The wrestling, the experience, the high-level wrestling experience, the size advantage, a lot of ups from Darian Caldwell, who I believe, with his wrestling, the more elusive, more technical grappler, his great frame for this division, a uphill battle for Leandro Higo, who does have powerful hands. If he's going to win this fight, it's going to be by knockout. Bellator, Darian Caldwell trying to defend this bantamweight division. Higo's got 1 win in this division, gets the title fight. We'll see what this fight brings us on Friday night. In the co-main event, it's also a 135-pound matchup. You get former 2-division champion Joe Warren, who's going to look to imply his wrestling style against Baby Joe Taiminglo, who's going to be looking for his guillotines. Baby Joe, both guys want to be on top. Baby Joe suffered against Darian Caldwell when he wasn't able to be on top. Joe Warren's going to look to implement that same kind of game plan. Oklahoma's own Emily Ducote is on the card, taking on Christina Williams. Ducote was involved in that first ever flyweight title fight, looking to get back in the win column. Tough grapplers meet in that one. Opening up the main card, you have former 4-division King of the Cage champion Juan the Spaniard Archuleta. Cannot wait to see him in action against Zach Church. A multitude of skills from the 17-1 Archuleta. This is a true showcase fight to introduce Archuleta to the Bellator nation, to the Bellator audience nationally. Someone that will be making an impact in the division sooner than later. And I believe his aspirations, again, are to rule multiple divisions. College wrestler Romero Cotton makes his second professional start on the prelims. That's on the Paramount Network and Bellator.com. You also have, for international action, Cage Warriors has an event going on Saturday. And KSW, the biggest mixed martial arts promotion in Poland. They have an event this weekend. You can check that on KSW.TV. Khalidov, Muhammad Khalidov is main eventing that one. Their middleweight champion, who is the best middleweight, in my opinion, outside of the UFC. The best fighter on the planet that you have not heard of if you only watch Bellator and the UFC. Cage Warriors, you can check that out Saturday during the day on UFC Fight Pass. It's a doubleheader during the day, Saturday on UFC Fight Pass, with that Cage Warriors 91 event and Glory 51 from Rotterdam, the Netherlands. Of course, you have the Super Fight Pass, the Super Fight Series portion of the card on UFC Fight Pass. That portion of the card includes and is headlined by former welterweight champion Cedric Doumbé, who has a 68-5-1 record, taking on the 48-6 Alim Abayev in a welterweight matchup. Both guys are ranked in the top 3 of the current Glory welterweight contender rankings. Then you have a 4-man welterweight contenders tournament on the Glory 51 main card. Very important to keep winning a tournament, and it's a lot of fun to watch those tournaments. I mean, 4 guys going all out, with one of them getting that next opportunity at a tournament that leads to a title shot. The main event, a grudge match. These guys are 1-1. It'll be the 3rd time fighting, and it's a heavyweight fight. We're talking about the legend Badr Hari, 106-13, taking on Hesti Gurgis, 50-19-1. Somebody's gonna get knocked out in the Glory ring. Biggest thing on tap for this weekend is, of course, the UFC action. UFC 222, unfortunately, not getting that featherweight title fight. Max Holloway, Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar still staying on the card in the co-main event, taking on Brian Ortega. The answer, I think, will have too much. There's a point where every fighter has to learn a lesson. And for Ortega, I think this is where he's going to see some of the holes in his stand-up. Not downplaying the talent of that beast Brian Ortega, T-City, and the amazing submissions he can pull off. But Frankie Edgar has only lost to, 2 guys? Mostly his entire career. We're talking about Ben Henderson and Jose Aldo. Thinking the veteranship, thinking about the being able to mix in his skills, the fast pace, and just the pressure that Edgar keeps up. I like his chances here against Ortega. The main event, on short notice, Yana Kunitskaya making her UFC debut, the former Invicta FC Bantamweight champion, taking on Chris Cyborg. This card needed a main event. Chris Cyborg is a bona fide superstar in the mixed martial arts world, and she looks for another title defense. I felt her win over Holly Holm cemented her as the top female mixed martial arts fighter of all time. This one is just to keep adding to the legacy. It's a short notice fight. It's a dangerous fight because you're taking on a girl that you don't know, but it is a Kunitskaya who's moving up from being a bantamweight. Either way, she was making this move. She's not making this move just for this fight. Kunitskaya will be in the UFC women's featherweight division as they finally try to put that division together. But a lot of big advantages going for Cyborg here in this fight. Obviously, she has the punching power. I do think that her clinch game is going to be very devastating in this one. We saw Kunitskaya kind of vulnerable against Evinger, and we already saw what Cyborg did against Evinger. But upsets happen in this sport, and one shin across the face, anything could happen. The rest of the pay-per-view main card, we'll see. You still have what originally was a co-main event, but is now the second fight on the main card. You got Stefan Struve versus Andrei Arlovski. Who can pull out of the little rut that they're in if this hits the ground? As always, I like Stefan Struve, but both guys have been questionable of the chin. I like a knockout in this fight. I think I like Stefan Struve. Dana White's newest favorite fighter, Sean O'Malley, Sean O'Malley, the Irish kid with the floppy hair, training out at Arizona. taking on another tough striker, the Asian sensation, Andrei Sukumov. Somebody's getting knocked out. That fight, some people may look at it and say, why is it on the main card? Is the UFC just trying to put over another young talent? Well, you want to see more stars. You want to see more stars made in this business. You have to start somewhere. One of these guys could be it because they both have vicious knockout power. And opening up the main card, can't downplay this one. It's the number 5 versus number 6 bantamweights in the ranking. You got Brazilian Caitlin Vieira welcoming back to the octagon, Kat Zingano. And has it been so long since we've seen Kat Zingano? Really hyped to see what she's added to her games. A tough task in Vieira, who has surpassed every obstacle that's been put in front of her, has shown good striking and good takedown defense. The FS1 prelims are featured by the octagon debut of Mackenzie Dern against Ashley Yoder. A battle of girls going for the armbar. Yoder has got to try to use her striking. Dern has improved every time out. I still don't know if her striking is at level, but her jiu-jitsu, of course, being a world champion at every level, is exceptional. Look for a big performance out of her. You have Beneil Dariush, who is a top 15 ranked lightweight, welcoming Alex Hernandez to the octagon. Hernandez taking this fight on short notice. Dariush, look for him to put on a show or for a young star to be made. John Dodson, Pedro Munoz. This fight has been rebooked to this card. Munoz will look for his guillotine, look for those big, powerful single shots. Dodson has got to put together punches and use his speed advantage. CB Dalloway versus Hector Lombard. It'll be just a triumph to see CB Dalloway make it to the octagon after the back injuries he's went through. How will that affect him? Hector Lombard has got to throw. He has not thrown. A lack of volume has been the death of him. CB Dalloway with a huge opportunity as, again, Hector Lombard has just not committed to being offensive in his last several fights. But he still has power to put you to sleep if you get lazy. Mike Pyle says he's retiring after his fight with Zach Ottawa. So you've got to hope that a guy as technical, that's been willing to fight anybody, a 40-plus fight vet like Mike Pyle, I want to see something good for him. Can he stop Zach Ottawa's takedowns? Ottawa will stand and trade. He may get buzzed. I think he'll rely on his takedowns. Look to see Mike Pyle there in Vegas go out on top. Pushed down way far on the Fight Pass prelims, and this could be, evident because of his inactivity. He's a top 10 ranked bantamweight. Brian Caraway, number 7 ranked, returns to take on Cody Stamann, who's rough, physical, energetic, youthful, a wrestler. But Caraway has been a technically gifted grappler and is hard to finish. This fight will be entertaining in a grappling aspect, so I don't know if the majority of the people will love it, but also the outcome will reflect a lot of the mental psyche of what Brian Caraway is in now, post Miesha Tate. Opening up the card, opening up those Fight Pass prelims, you got 2 light heavyweights, a division that, again, we need more stars, more up-and-coming talent and prospects. These 2 guys are a pair of great prospects. The prototype, Adam Milstead, heavy-handed knockout artist, taking on Midwest wrestler Jordan Big Swingin' Johnson. Love that nickname. They always used to talk about it on Access TV. Johnson has not been the finisher that Milstead has, but he's a great grappler coming along in his striking repertoire. You always like to go with the grappler, but if Johnson loses, it's because Milstead put him to sleep. So a huge weekend of mixed martial arts action. Not to mention also out in Columbus, Ohio, the best flyweight matchup outside of the UFC, outside of LFA, that could be put together is going down at the Arnold Sports and Fitness Festival on Saturday. You have Latrell Yee product, Jordan Chino Espinosa, who defeated Nick Urso on the Contender Series, taking on LFA and fellow Contender Series vet CJ Hamilton. Justin Edwards, UFC vet, is also on that card. Well, it comes to mind thinking about other things going on. A huge congratulations needs to be sent out to Cynthia Sin Arceo, now the King of the Cage, professional strawweight champion, duplicates the honor that she received as an amateur. Knew that was a big goal for the El Paso native. As far as the local calendar goes, the next time we have an event, there's boxing. Legacy Boxing Promotions, Route to Glory at Route 66 Casino, March 17th. American Fight League presents Southwest Brawl 7 at the Las Cruces Convention Center in Las Cruces, New Mexico, March 31st. April 21st, School of Hard Knocks has a MMA event in Hobbs, yet to be named. April 28th, Art of War in Clovis, thanks to Force of One Fighting Championships. And more boxing on tap for May 12th. Chaos in Clovis 2, presented by School of Hard Knocks. And that is your local calendar. Got to give a shout out to Mac10, that's MMACK10, and Edwin Ruiz, their owner. Check them out on Facebook, supporting myself and combat sports athletes everywhere, combat sports enthusiasts of all type. So check them out. If you don't already, follow Caged Minds on Twitter and Instagram at Caged Minds MMA, and on Facebook, Caged Minds Combat Sports News. Enjoy some fights this weekend. There's a ton of them coming up.